Welcome to the Unshackled Life Podcast. Real talk about faith, freedom, and following Jesus. I'm Dalen Woodard, and I'm glad you're here. Whether you've been walking with Jesus for years or you're just trying to figure out what's real in a noisy world, this space is for honest conversation, raw reflection, and truth that sets us free. Let's get into today's episode. A couple of months ago, Leah and I celebrated 15 years together a month early by going to a reptile show where I got her a couple of baby map turtles and she got me a cute crested gecko and an orange baboon tarantula. Obi, the spider, has been the star subject of a couple of episodes at this point. Orange Bitey Thing and more recently, Anxious Orange. But the gecko has only been mentioned in passing in that first episode, greatly outshined by the thrilling danger of a tarantula with a medically significant bite. But Tankie the gecko, that's what you get when you allow your 4-year-old granddaughter to name your reptiles. Tankie got his little feelings hurt, I guess, that I hadn't done an episode that featured him and decided to pull a Steve McQueen and make his great escape. I know that seems unlikely, but seriously, I put out the Anxious Orange episode, in which Obi was talked about and Tankie wasn't mentioned, and that very night, as Leah and I slept, the gecko managed to slip out and away. The next morning, as I did my devotions in my study, Leah interrupted me crying because Tankie was gone. My first thought was gone as in unalive. But no, literally gone as escaped. I was okay. I comforted Leah and assured her it was okay, although, as she rightly pointed out, it didn't feel okay. We've both heard of people who lost their lizards only to find them later, sometimes as much as a year later. I hoped this would happen for us, but I didn't really expect it. I figured I'd be keeping an eye out for a replacement at a good price. The rest of that day and the next day went well for the most part, but that now empty habitat sort of emphasized that this life is not quite what it should be or could be. It's a little thing to lose a lizard you've only had for a short time, but the culmination of many little disappointments can weigh as much as one big disaster if you hold on to them. 30 gallons of water weighs the same if it's collected in a few minutes or one drop at a time over days or weeks. Speaking of 30 gallons of water, on day 3 after Tankie's escape, Leah began yelling for me from the other side of the house as I sat in my study preparing to teach on Matthew 6 later this week. Our water heater exploded and was gushing water all over the utility room and running under the wall into the next room. I rushed to cut off the water and then spent the next 7 or 8 hours dealing with that disaster. I did my best to walk in grace and gratitude. Yes, I said gratitude. I know, on the surface, there surely didn't seem like much to be grateful for. There was water everywhere. I had to disconnect the old water heater and pull it out. I was hurting, and it was hot and muggy in there. Worse, we're broke, and it may be a first world problem, but hot water feels pretty essential. The area was a wet mess, and I had no clue as to how or when we were going to get a new water heater. I believe I had good reason to feel upset, to feel defeated, anxious, and discouraged. I did feel those things at times, when I first faced what was happening, and a few times when even what I could do wasn't going as smoothly as it could have gone. But God was worthy of my trust that He had us and the situation, and that's something that was as true as the fact that this is a part of life under the curse. Corruption and decay and loss are a part of life for now. But I assure you, There won't be water heaters that blow up or cars that break down on the new earth of eternity, as corruption will be no more. The truth was that there was plenty to be grateful for, a reason to be thankful in that very moment, which is the will of God. It's God's will for us to be thankful in all things, not for all things, but in the midst of them. So I thought I'd share a few of the reasons I had to be grateful in that moment as everything looked and felt like disaster. First, we were home, and Leah was close enough to hear the water going everywhere before much damage had been done. Seriously, if we'd been gone when it happened, our home would have been flooded fairly quickly. I was able to get the unit disconnected and out of the house, and my old body complained, but kept going. My back and knees screamed in fury, but didn't quit on me. I knew the water heater was about gone. It should have been replaced at least 5 years ago. I've repaired it 3 times because we simply didn't have the money to replace it. It lasted so much longer than it should have. And that is a blessing. And let's face it, if you ride it till the wheels come off, there's bound to be a wreck when they finally do. It could have been so much worse. Then there's the big gratitude moment that came several hours into the trouble. As I prepared to cap the water line so we could turn the water back on to the rest of the house, and Leah set herself to spend time boiling water when we needed it for a while, we were given a way to get a new water heater and have 30 days to pay it off. Hallelujah! A few hours later, the new water heater was installed and working. Yes, there was plenty to be grateful for. I wish I could say I walked in the grace of gratitude the entire day, but as I mentioned before, there were times when the frustration and fear got to me, and my heart shifted into grumbling and complaining instead of gratitude. A couple of hours after everything was done, I lay down preparing to attempt some sleep and was literally thinking to myself about all the reasons to be grateful that day and how the moments when I wasn't able to walk in that, when I grumbled and complained, and when anger and frustration rose up as I wrestled with the situation, only made things more difficult for me and for my lovely wife. God doesn't want us grumbling and complaining, and that's not just because it's annoying to listen to, which it is. Let's face it, we rarely enjoy listening to whining unless we're the one doing it. We all know it's miserable to be around someone always complaining, even if there seems to be a good reason to moan. No, God hates an ungrateful heart and attitude because of what it does to us, to the ones stuck in that gear. As I said a silent prayer to be more quick to be grateful and more able to stay in gratitude, even in times of crisis and discouragement, Leah spotted Tankie on our bedroom wall way up by the ceiling. A few minutes and a stepladder later, and my little gecko was in my hand on his way back to where he belongs. We gave him water, which he appreciated since I'm sure it was the first he'd had in 3 days. Fed him and gave him what he needed, but his return was what we needed. It was a small thing, a little lizard I hadn't even had long and that didn't cost much. But it felt huge. It felt like a bear hug from God saying, I had you all this time and I know you're starting to see it and get it, but just to make it clear, here's a blessing to give you cause to rejoice at the end of this long, hard day. You know, gratitude doesn't change the fact that water heaters break and little geckos decide to go on grand adventures. It doesn't erase frustration or make hard things easy. But it does change how we walk through them, and maybe, more importantly, who we become in the process. The truth is, God had us the whole time, in the big thing and the small thing. He has you too, and sometimes He'll give you a Tankie moment, That unexpected little blessing that reminds you He's been holding it all together from the start. My prayer is that you'll notice those moments, and even in the middle of the mess, choose gratitude. Not for the mess, but in it, because that's where His peace and joy break through. Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Unshackled Life Podcast. If it encouraged, blessed, or challenged you, consider following the podcast and sharing it with someone you feel it might bless or help. Be blessed, and remember, when you fix your thoughts on God and build your thinking on the foundation of His truth, God fixes your thoughts.